Welcome to Superstitions, Traditions, and Definitions. I'm Kristen,
And I'm Carol.
and today is Am I the Asshole? Historical Edition.
Marvelous.
I know.
I can't wait.
Our 30 seconds. We have met 30. This will be 32 assholes.
Oh, my
Except
goodness.
most of them weren't assholes.
No.
Some of them were.
Some of them were, and some weren't, but by association were.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying?
I know
Yeah.
what you're saying. Apparently, I am the asshole a lot.
Sometimes. Yeah.
It happens.
It does.
I don't lose sleep over it.
I wouldn't think so. Anyway, what do we got?
All right.
Let's hear it.
For today.
Okay.
Am I the asshole for buying parcels of land, building a home on it, and renting only to lower income African Americans amassing a fortune?
Okay. Gonna need a little more info.
I mean, that kind of sounds like an asshole.
Well, how so? I built houses and gave people places to live. What's wrong with that?
He got rich doing it.
So?
Okay. All right.
Would you do it and get poor?
I mean, that would be silly.
It would be silly. So, it's an enterprise.
It is.
Yeah. I think it's okay.
Okay.
Until you read me the rest of this.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, get to it.
All right. Prior to my birth, my parents were enslaved.
Oh.
I was the first in my family born free. However, things were very difficult for us.
Certainly.
I received only a 4th grade education. I worked as a carpenter, and in 1896, I moved to Miami to work for the Henry Flagler Florida East Coast Railroad. This was during segregation, and housing was hard to find for Black Americans. I wanted to help my brothers and sisters as best as I could. I began buying one parcel of land in Overtown and built a small rental home on it. I continued to do this one parcel of land, one rental at a time, eventually expanding as far north as Fort Lauderdale. In 1917, my wife...
As far north as Fort Lauderdale?
Mm-hmm.
It's not very north. I guess if you're at the
When...
bottom of Florida.
Yeah.
Okay. I was expecting as far north as Minneapolis, but as far north as...
I mean, 1890s, you're walking.
No, I
maybe
get it.
hopping on a train.
I get it. It just sounded...
Fort Lauderdale would be like way far.
Well, as far north as Fort Lauderdale, you don't really...
I know.
You know what I'm saying?
I get it. I
No,
get it.
Okay. No, just wanted to interrupt you there.
I get it.
Get back to it. Let's
Okay.
hear.
In 1917, my wife, Rebecca, and I sold a parcel of land to the city of Miami to build a park for African Americans. Dorsey Park is still there today. Eventually, I was able to build the first Black-owned hotel in Miami and the first Negro Savings Bank.
Wow.
I was a trustee at a local Black church, having not received a proper education myself, I wanted to ensure young Black children would have the opportunity to learn. I donated money to education as often as possible and land for school buildings. I also assisted with the construction of a library. In the time of Jim Crow, when my race was learning to live as free, though not citizens, with people in the world against them, I wanted to assist them in finding their rightful place. I wanted to better the lives of Miami's Black population. At one time, I owned Fisher Island, the most valuable real estate in the world. I wanted to build a resort for African Americans to enjoy the finer things often only afforded to whites. However, that was not to be. When influential whites found out my plans for the island, it was made impossible and I was forced to sell it.
Oh.
But was able to reinvest that money to help my people. I died a millionaire and fondly remembered for helping my fellow man.
Well, why would he be an asshole
He's
then?
not an asshole.
Okay.
He wasn't.
No.
Fisher Island today is like the most prime real estates on the planet. At this time, when Flagler put the railroad through Miami, west of the railroad was the designated black area, and east was the designated white area. Fisher Island, well, actually wasn't an island at the time, it was a peninsula. It was dug out to be made an island later on. Was on the east side. So we're at a time when black people couldn't even walk on the beach. They couldn't swim in the ocean. So his plan was to build this island and put some hotels and resorts and like they could swim and
So they could.
And then white people found out about it. Carl Fisher ended up buying the island from him. And
named it Fisher Island.
Islands.
After his people.
He did. He actually bought it through his business. But anyway, that's beside the point. They wouldn't be allowed to swim on or walk on a beach or swim in Miami until after Dorsey passed. This gentleman's name is Dana Allen Dorsey.
Okay.
He was the first black millionaire in Miami.
Okay. In Miami?
In Miami.
Florida?
Miami.
Okay.
I don't know about Florida. I just know that was always said the first black millionaire in Miami.
Okay. Meaning that there are more.
There are more now.
Hey.
Thanks to him.
Right.
I'm sure.
Oh yeah, I'm sure he had a huge impact.
Right. Allowing him, he started the bank so that he could loan money so that they could better their lives.
Sure.
Was big on education because he didn't
have any.
Get one.
Wanted to make sure others.
And I think of that, like he did so well for himself without an education. But to recognize the importance of it, it just, I don't know, that seemed interesting to me.
Right.
But he bought his first parcel of land when he moved to Miami for $25.
How big was it? How big is the parcel?
I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know. Overtown was the west of the railroad tracks, like the black community. And he bought a parcel of land there. I don't know how big the parcel was, but I know he built a little house on there and rented it and then used that money to buy another and just did this until...
And made it his business.
He made it
his business.
Him money. It made him money. It
helped other people.
It helped build schools. One of the schools he built it as like an elementary school for black children. But it's still standing today. It's still a school today,
neat.
but it's now an adult education center.
Well, that's cool.
Like a VOTEC kind of thing.
Really? Interesting.
I know it. He was born in Georgia.
And his family, his parents were slaves.
His parents were slaves. He was born in 1872 in Georgia.
Okay.
His parents were slaves, freed right before he was born.
Right.
But wanted a life for himself, wanted to make some money, help some people. So he went south kind of followed work, I guess. He was a carpenter by trade.
Sure. Yeah, that would be.
And gets
the migration of finding employment.
Yeah. Gets to Miami, goes to work for this railroad company, and just is observant. And it's like life is hard for us. I mean,
Saw
this is
need, definitely.
Jim Crow, and
right.
Black people were kind of pushed to the crappy sides of town, and education wasn't provided for them, and
probably trying to keep them out of sight.
Yeah, kind of tucked away. They wanted to keep them for the employment.
Yeah, but
do the work.
Not for the rubbing elbows.
Right.
And, they didn't want to hobnob.
Right.
Gotcha.
So he saw the need and built the facilities and the homes, and was instrumental in getting a library and a park, and just making Overton like a city and not just some place to stick people.
Right. Was it, before he was there, was it like slums, or was it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, pretty much. I mean, it was not prime real estate, for one thing.
No, I get it.
And black people at this time weren't paid as well as white people, and there was no minimum wage. That didn't even exist.
Sure. No,
so
personally.
It was pretty much, we get to decide what you're worth, and you're
got
black,
nothing
so
to
you're
say about
not.
it.
Right.
We've got nothing to say. Take it or leave it.
Yeah, this is workers' rights and all of this stuff. So, I mean, it was fair game for employers.
Sure, and well, I mean, you have to work.
And you have to work.
So you have to take what you can get.
You would work 16-hour days to take home $4 and then try to...
Insane.
7 days a week. There were no labor laws in
No
the
weekends.
early... Right. It took a lot of fighting to get rights for any workers, regardless of color. So, I mean, even at this time, there were no white people as far as long hours and no days off, and treated crappy by employers. They were treated the same. They were paid better, and I mean, treated more like human beings, but there was no labor law, no labor anything, and
No, things had to be really bad for there to be a law created.
Took a lot of strikes and protests and fighting, and that is one thing that has fascinated me. I've studied that like nobody's business.
Oh, I believe it.
Workers' rights and workers' comp and how all that stuff got started. Lots of discriminatory practices too.
And hardship. Well, I'd say he's definitely not the asshole, even if he did get rich. Good for him for getting rich.
I know. And then using that money to
Help other people.
build a park and library and schools.
Very much a philanthropist. I think it's good that he got rich.
Yeah, if you look his name up, that's the first thing you see is philanthropist. Yeah.
I believe it.
And it lists all his other businessman, banker, just, all of the other ventures he had, real estate mogul.
How was he able to open these businesses and not be run out? I mean, I understand he had to sell his island, but he was able to open a bank.
He was, but he opened a bank in the black part of town. I mean, he wasn't competing with white people because the white banks weren't banking with.
No.
So
I just figured it'd be something that would get stomped.
I mean, I'm sure that it was tried, but
Frowned upon.
Frowned upon, yeah. Or tried to stomp out, but at some point it was, okay, fine, you go do this so we don't have to talk to you guys.
Right. Yeah, he probably didn't just go and hang on a shingle and be like, hey.
Right. He didn't walk up to this building and be like, I'm black and I want to put a bank in here. And they were like, that's fantastic.
Wonderful. We've been waiting for you all day.
I mean, there had to be a reason.
I'm sure there was a lot of struggle and a lot of fight to get that opened.
Yeah.
I mean, how does one open a bank? You know what I mean? I mean, that's what I mean is you've got to have money to do it. So you had to come up, you know what I mean?
And then the federal government, I'm sure, has to be involved somehow. And there are permits and
all that jazz.
Funding and reserve and I don't know what goes into it. But
oh, no, I have not a clue.
Whether they wanted him to or not, at some point they were like, there's a need and we don't want to meet it, so here you go.
And it's probably not so much they didn't want to, they just refused to.
Right.
Which,
Right.
is, I get the whole, race dynamics and all that, but that's, talking about shooting yourself in the foot. Here's an opportunity to, make money, make interest, make all this, and they're still turning it down.
Right. And I don't understand why we look at some people and think, oh, your color is wrong. You have to be dumb, or you have to be this, which was the common.
We don't. There may be
the common.
Yeah.
At the time, and
sure.
It was
it's just ignorance. It's just not knowing anything
right.
about these people and fear.
But if you look at the cultures,
being afraid is a lot of it, because you're like, well,
right. And I understand fear to an extent.
I'm not trying to justify it. I'm just saying
it was
these people
European
didn't know any
thing.
damn thing.
It was a primarily European thing. Native Americans, Black, African Americans, that they weren't. But even the
there
white
were blacks who didn't like white folks.
There
and
were
Indians who didn't like white folks, and white folks who didn't like any of them.
But there wasn't the mentality of the Europeans who said, because you are the wrong color, you are not as good as me. We don't like you for whatever reason. That's whatever.
Sure. But in that time period, it wasn't everybody that felt that way. If it had been everybody that felt that way, nothing would have ever changed.
True.
It was there were people who ended up being in power, who had no business being in power, who
right.
had no business out there hating everybody in the world that wasn't like them. And it's too bad, and I'm glad that we don't understand that kind of thing, because we would be like that if we did.
True.
I can't get my head around it. I don't ever want to be like, well,
I don't. I mean, yes, it started
now
with.
I see why.
We hop on a boat in search of a better route to get our goods.
Yeah.
In the process, we find this land with these people who are darker than us. And the first thing we think is, you would make good labor. I don't really see the value in you other than that.
Well, that wasn't just white people, though.
It was primarily white people.
But it wasn't only.
There were Black African Americans who traded their own people.
Yes.
Out of necessity.
It was necessary to sell people into slavery.
If you were going yourself, if you work up a deal with me to get rid of your folks, and I won't take you.
Oh, well, there's no virtue in that.
There might not be virtue in that, but you're going to do what you're going to do to save yourself.
That's slimy and terrible and horrible.
It is.
And there's no excuse for it. I don't care. You trade, even way back, there's no virtue in that.
No, there's no virtue in it, but there is.
Whew, I saved myself by trading in my fellow man. No. Fuck that. No. It's deplorable no matter.
It's deplorable no matter what.
No matter the time. Yes. But weren't we just talking about Indians that had slaves?
Indians had slaves. Yes.
Right. We were just talking about that. I can't remember what we said, though. But anyway, we don't need to get into a big political discussion about it.
No.
It's wrong all the way around.
It is.
And yeah.
It is.
But someone rose from the ashes and created opportunity, which is a big deal.
And you're right. That is a big deal.
Mm-hmm. And he was brave enough to do it. I'm sure he met a lot of resistance.
Oh, I'm sure. I'm sure he did.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the fact that there were designated parts of town.
Right.
I mean, Indians ended up here because we're like, that's Oklahoma.
Move you along.
We're going to move you. We don't see value in this area, so.
It's kind of trashy. Here, why don't you take it? Oh, shit, there's oil there.
Yeah, now we need it back.
Damn, let's move you over this way. I get it, and it was wrong.
Yeah.
And terrible. There's a lot of that went on. in every race. Well, there was. Being bad people isn't universal to one group. There's lots of bad people out there. Right. And then there's also a lot of good people out there that...
There are a lot of good people out there.
That will stand in the gap. He sounds like a gap stander.
He does.
He doesn't sound like an asshole. How much did Carl... did he sell his island for? How much did he end up getting for it?
I couldn't find how much he sold it for, but he bought it for $8,000.
Oh, that'd be a fortune.
At that time, yeah.
Yeah.
And he turned around. I mean, it wasn't even a full 2 years later that he was forced to sell it. And so I'm hoping, because it's not recorded,
he at least got his money.
He at least got his money out of it.
He probably didn't.
He probably didn't. We know that. But he did turn around and invested it. Yeah, I can't give you this, but I can help with education.
Yeah.
And I think
which that's a start. That's always like the first rung.
Right. I think it's sad at this time that he's looking at not how to bring us all together, because I mean that obviously was just not comprehensible, I guess.
Right.
And so it's just, I don't know. It's just sad to me that instead I'm glad he did what he had to do to help Black people.
There's somebody
but it breaks my heart that was the only option. I can only help you by giving you this here.
Right.
I can't help you by making them see us as citizens. And I mean, they didn't even have citizenship.
No, they didn't. And I don't remember when that came about, but it's the small things that equal a great many things.
Right.
So think about the people that were helped and their ancestors and
that
their
went
family
on to
after that,
do civil rights movement and lead that and all. It just breaks my heart that it wasn't even a thought.
No.
And
it's
like to have been broken down so much that it's not even a consideration. I need to start a bank for Black people.
Right. Because white people
because there are
banks.
1,500 banks out there and we can't use them, and it wasn't a, hey, can I go into business with you and we can help white and Black people. It wasn't even a consideration because that was just something so unobtainable and unrealistic.
Well, it was something that nobody had ever done.
Right.
And that's why things are different now.
Right.
Because people had to be like, why not? And that's where it all comes from is, well, why not? And then, you find out, well, because nobody does it that way. Well, that's not a reason. So I will go ahead and I'll get my bank and I'll build houses and I will build a school. And that goes a long way.
It does.
It did.
It did.
Not the asshole.
Not the asshole.
Maybe the dude that bought the island. Maybe he's the asshole.
I don't know any. His name was Carl Fisher. I don't know
Is that
anything.
why it's Fisher Island?
Yes. I don't know anything about him.
I thought it was Fisher Island like they fished.
No.
I didn't know it was named after anybody.
It was Fisher Island because it was purchased through his company.
Yeah.
And I can't remember the name of the company, but the owner's name was Carl Fisher, and that's how Fisher Island.
Mr. Fisher's company.
Yeah.
Yep.
So.
Got you. Interesting. All right.
All right. So let us know your thoughts. And come back on Saturdays for Am I the Asshole? Tuesdays for Superstitions.
Yes. We'll be here. Join us.
I'm here every Saturday and Tuesday. Carol's here every Saturday and Tuesday too.
Yep. Most of the time.
Most of the time.
Most of the time. You're always here.
Nice.
Sometimes I'm sick.
Sometimes you're sick.
Yeah, I get sick once in a while.
I'm always here. This is my baby.
I know. It's your baby, but I'm the chauffeur. So
you're the chauffeur.
So we're 50-50.
You're the chauffeur and the comic relief.
Sometimes.
And
I'm always the driver. Sometimes I'm the comic relief.
yeah.
Yeah.
You're the people listen so they don't hear me be all like teachery.
You're not all teachery. You're funny. It's all that. It's that dry humor.
It probably would be really funny to watch me here by myself talking. Be like, oh, you poor dumb girl.
Oh, you're not a poor dumb girl.
You poor dumb girl. Look at you go.
Poor silly girl. No,
all right,
we're
Carol.
good.
We do good together.
I think so.
Carol loves you.
I do.
I have a fondness.
She does.
Come back and see us.